Well, good morning, everyone. Today is May the 8th, 2015, and today's WX Live webinar, it's number 149, Pete Halsted with an Uncle Pete's Corner on printing multiple reports in WebDev. Well, it's all yours, Pete.
All right, good morning. So, like Tim said, what we're going to talk about today is printing reports from WebDev. There's a few tricks to it. The goal is, of course, you can't print directly to the printer or anything because you're dealing with a browser and WebDev. So instead, what you do is you generate the report as a PDF. And you would ideally like that PDF to open in a separate tab so that the user doesn't lose their spot in your website and they're just stuck in a browser tab with a PDF, and now they've got to navigate back to your website. We've talked about and shared that code before, and we're going to go over and review that today, and then we're going to extend it to the point of being able to let the user select multiple reports and generate all of them at one time, each report opening up in its own separate tab. So that's what we're going to do today. So we've got a pretty simple little web page here, and we've got a button for one of 4 different reports that we can run. So if I click on the products between $10 and $12, we'll try that again with the app actually running. We'll see that a new tab opened and our report is now showing in that tab as a PDF. And this interface will be slightly different depending on what PDF viewer your user has installed on their end. You know, that again is something you have no control over if they're using Acrobat PDF viewer or some other PDF viewer. So the interface of how that PDF looks in their browser, to some extent, you don't have control over, but the main purpose was, you notice we still have the website on our main tab of our browser. So now the user can flip back over here and continue navigating our site. If we hadn't done the extra code, we would be just stuck on this PDF and the user would have no way to get back to the site. So that's the printing a single report, and we'll go through and review that code real quick as a starting point. So if we look at the code behind that, it's pretty simple. There's one line of browser code. Is that code big enough, or do I need to blow it up a little bit, Tim?
Yeah, blow it up a little bit, please. There you go. That looks good. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. So the first key to all of this is change target new browser in the browser code. That is what gives us opening up the separate tab. And I can show you that real quick if we, actually I want to, yeah. If I comment out that line of code, and then if I click this button, close the other versions down. Now the report generates, we see the PDF, but what just happened? The website went away. The user now has no way to navigate back over to our website other than using the back button. And with WebDev dynamic sites and user logins and sessions, that's a very bad idea. So that's the reason we want that PDF to open up as a separate tab. So that's what this first line of browser code does. Then on the server side, the first thing to note on the server side is we're not using Ajax code. We can't Ajax enable this button because we're doing a file display, and file display won't work inside of Ajax because it's actually moving to another page, and you can't move to another page within an AJAX call. So that is the reason we have the AJAX disabled for this button. So the first line of code simply comes up with a file name for our PDF. I'm using the F data directory as a good place to store that PDF that I know I will have read-write access to. That's a standard WebDev function. And then I'm just using the date and time to come up with a unique name for the PDF. I then use the iDestination function to tell the report I want it to generate a PDF, and I want it to be named the file name that we just came up with. Like I said, obviously we can't print directly to the printer. The only printers that we would be able to print directly to are the server printers, and naturally that would do us no good. So what we need to do is generate it as a PDF and then get the PDF to that user instead. So that's the reason we're doing the iDestination function. Line 3 is initializing the query of the report. Pretty similar to the hexecute query function, except you notice that we just give it the report name, and then the report knows what query that report is based on. So my query for this report just simply has a low and a high value. So this example button, we're saying everything between 10 and 12. So I'm initializing that query with 10 and 12. And then finally, line 4, I print the report, which is I'm passing that high and low parameter to it simply so that I can make that title look nice. I don't think we have it up anymore. No. Let me go run it one more time here. The only reason I'm passing that parameters in is so that I can adjust these titles so that you know what this report represents. So once the report is generated, it's now setting in the F data directory as a PDF. Then we issue the file display command. The file display command is like the page display command, except page display is going to call a WebDev page. File display is going to display an external file to the browser, and we're telling it what kind of file it is. This is a MIME type application PDF. If we did application XLS, then it would try to open it with Excel on the user's machine. So we know it's a PDF file, so we're saying, hey, display this file, it's a PDF, and that's what causes the browser to load that file up and use the Acrobat viewer. Again, the key to all this is it having issued that change target, this file display command takes place in a separate tab of the browser. Otherwise, it would have taken place in the tab we were on and we would have lost our WebDev site. And then the final command I issue is just to delete the PDF once we're done so that we don't have a ton of PDFs laying around on the server. Now, you probably want to create some kind of routine that once a week, once a day, what have you, does clear up extra PDFs out of the F data directory, because invariably you'll run into reasons that the PDFs don't get deleted properly. A user closes their browser in the middle of the report generation, etc., and the fdelete function never gets hit. So for the most part, it'll clean itself up with this code, but you do need to do a little housekeeping on some type of routine. So that's the basics of report printing. And if we go back over to our interface, we see the user can click on any of these and get a report, and each time he does, it opens up in a new browser window. And of course, I picked a database that I have like 100,000 product records, so some of these reports take a few seconds to generate. So that's the basics of it. That's how you print a report in WebDev. Now, the thing that I ran into recently was a similar interface to this interface. Although this works, it's likely that the user may want to print more than one of those reports. You know, he may need 2 or 3 reports at one time, and this interface forces him to do them one at a time. So it'd be much nicer if he could do that all at once. So instead, it'd be much nicer if we had an interface like this with checkboxes instead of buttons, where he could check the ones that he wants, and then he could click the print button and get all of those reports at one time. And it's taken just a second to generate. And as you see, what happened was I selected 2 reports, and both of those reports printed and popped up as separate tabs. So that's what we're truly going to look at today, is how did I modify that original code to handle this situation. And you would probably expect, wrong WebDev. Hang on just a second, let me close that. Once again, this came out of something that I did for Alan's project, so that's Alan's project you see there. If we look at the code, you probably would expect to see code kind of like this. We do the change target just like we did on the single code, and then we just simply, for each checkbox, print the report, do a file display if any of the checkboxes are checked. More than likely, you would have expected that code to work. I tried this code when I first did this and found out, no, that code won't work. And if we do that, let's try that code. We'll see what happens is it runs, but we only ever get the first report. We don't ever get any other reports. So no matter how many checkboxes we checked, we only get the one report. The reason for that is this file display command. Between the change target and the file display, we've kind of started a separate session on a new tab of the browser. So once it does that, once the file display is issued, it can't do another one. It can't generate these additional reports and do file displays because it has left this page and is now on this page, which obviously this page is not a WebDev dynamic site and doesn't have all that additional logic. So we never get all those additional commands executed and get our reports. So we need to modify the code a bit to handle that. And if you've paid attention to past webinars, when we talk about WebDev, you probably have a pretty good idea how we go about doing that. It's a combination of hidden buttons, hidden edit controls, and a timer. Almost every time we need to work around browser security model, AJAX issues, those 3 concepts come into play, and this is no exception. So let's review how I got it to work. First thing I did was I created 3 global browser variables. And the way you create a global browser variable is define it in the onload event. Report timer is going to keep the ID of the timer that I'm going to start so that I can stop that timer once I'm done with it. Reports printed is going to keep track of, as I loop through and print each report, it's going to keep track of that so I know once I've got all the reports printed. And report count is going to keep track of how many reports need to be printed. In other words, how many checkboxes have been checked on the screen. So I've got those three local or global browser variables declared. The next thing I did was I created a total of 5 hidden edit controls. Report to print 1 through 4. And these are off the page, and they're defined as invisible and can be overlaid. And the only reason I'm doing that is so that I can see them. If I didn't say overlaid, I would just see pink and couldn't really see it. So I just do that. So that I can see them. At design time. At runtime, we never see any of this because it's all hidden. And this is just the method that I've kind of taken is all my hidden edit controls and buttons that I use, that almost every advanced WebDev page I do winds up with some. I always just keep them to the right of my actual page definition. That way, I immediately know when I open up this page, okay, this stuff over here is hidden stuff that I'm using for some special purpose. So I've got report to print 1 through 4, which corresponds to our 4 choices. And then I also have one that's just report to print without 1 through 4 in it. And you'll see as we go through the code why I've got those 2 separate ones. So now if we look at the code behind the button that actually works, it looks very similar to the code that didn't work. The only difference is this line here has replaced the 2 lines that said file display and F delete. We got rid of file display and F delete, and instead we set up the edit control to be the report file name. So if all is checked, we generate that report and we set the edit control to the name of that report. Same with under 5, we set edit report to print 2 equals the name of that PDF file. On down the line, so what this code is doing is generating up to our 4 PDFs and putting the name of those PDF files in the 1, 2, 3, and 4 variables respectively. Now we also have to tweak the browser code of this button, but we'll come back to that in a second. All right, the next thing we need to do now that we've got the server code of that button working, one other thing to note, now this button is Ajax enabled because we're no longer doing the file display directly on this button. We can now Ajax enable this button so that it doesn't do a page refresh after it executes. The next thing we need to do is create a hidden button, and that hidden button has the actual file display F delete, and you will see that I'm printing the whatever's in report to print. That's what, remember I had 1 through 4 and then I have 1 without a number. What I'm going to be doing as we look at the code here shortly is with each loop of the timer, I move the report to print out of 1, 2, 3, or 4 into the actual report to print. And then this code simply issues the file display and the fdelete for that particular PDF file, and then clears it out. And you'll notice that this button does have our change target on, because this is the button that is doing our file display, and we want that to happen in another tab. And of course, because it's doing a file display, it is not AJAX enabled. So there's our button. Next, we need a procedure, and that's this browser procedure right here. This browser procedure is going to be fired from the timer we're getting ready to start. And what this is going to do is every time the timer fires, this code's going to run, and it's going to say, is there a report 1 to print? Is there a report 2 to print? Is there a report 3 to print? Is there a report 4 to print? And it only, the way these if statements are nested, only each pass of this, so every time this procedure runs, it's going to print 1 report, because we can't print multiple ones. We can't issue that file display multiple times inside the same trip to the server, so we have to do it 1 at a time. So each time the timer fires, that's what we're doing here. So the first time through, it says, is there anything in report to print 1? If so, let's increment the reports printed. So now we're saying, okay, I've printed 1 report. I've printed 2 reports. I've printed 3 reports. So each time it prints a report, it's going to increment that global browser variable that we created to keep track of how many reports we printed. And then, as I said, it moves the report to print, the PDF file name, from the 1, 2, 3, or 4 into the generic report to print. It clears out 1 so that the next time through, this if statement will fail and it'll fall through and test the second one. And then the final thing it does is uses the execute process, TRT click, to press that hidden button that we just created. This execute process, TRT click, is a very important function. What that does is it makes that browser behave the same as if that user had manually clicked that button, which means it's going to fire the browser code, fire the server code, do all the things that it would do if I had that button on the screen and the user actually clicked it interactively. So that's how we kind of get around this whole AJAX trips and browser security model, is because every time this timer fires, it's pushing that button 1 time. So it's more or less mimicking the same thing as our first example did, where that user pressed 4 different buttons. Now what it's doing is 4 different times it's pressing the print button and printing 1 report. And then the last bit to make all this work is the browser code of the visible button that the user presses. The first thing we do is start a timer. What we're saying here is every quarter of a second, we want to run that browser procedure that we just created. And when you create a timer, it returns an ID of that timer to you. And we're just storing that in that global variable report timer. And the reason we're doing that is the very last lines of this procedure say, if our reports printed is greater than or equal to our number of reports to print, then we shut the timer down. So in other words, if we checked for print reports that we wanted, and then we looped through here 4 times and printed each of those reports, then we're done. Go ahead and shut that timer down so this procedure quits running. So it's just a little bit of cleaning up after ourselves and tidying up is what that logic is doing. So that's our first issue here. We set the report count to 0 and the reports printed to 0. That's just some general housekeeping in case they stayed on the report screen and do it multiple times. We want to make sure that we're refreshing everything and starting out with fresh logic. And then all I'm doing is checking each of these checkboxes and increasing the report count by 1. So if you had checked all and over 20, report count would be 2. Everything else would run, and once those 2 reports printed, report printed would be 2, report count is 2, and we would end the timer. And that's the end of our logic. And that's how now when we press this button, the server code generates the 4 PDFs, puts their file names in here, starts the timer, and that timer, every time it loops through, it sees a PDF file name in one of these 4 fields, moves it into that field, presses that button then issues the file display command to actually show that PDF in a separate tab, and around and around the merry-go-round goes until all the reports are printed. Then the timer ends and we're done. So it's all the same code that we originally had. We just had to break it up into a couple of different pieces so that we could issue those as separate commands with a separate trip to the server each time, so that we wouldn't get into this issue of once we've made that file display, we've lost our connection and can no longer issue any more file displays. Any questions, comments? That's the end of the session for today. Pretty simple and sweet.
I don't see any questions, and that was really good stuff, Pete. Shows how you can do some some inventive things with the code to make it do what you want it to do behind the scenes.
Yeah, like I said, when you start working with WebDev, this concept of hidden edit controls, hidden buttons, and timers is kind of the key to extending WebDev. Without those 3 concepts, it's very hard to do anything beyond the very basics in WebDev. So these concepts, even though you may not use this particular thing, you may not have anywhere that you need to print multiple reports, those same concepts will come in play somewhere for you. So it's still very good to learn those 3 concepts.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of extending WebDev, do you want to talk for a minute or 2 about your courses that you're going to be teaching at the DevCon, or do you just want me to announce the titles of them?
No, we can talk about it shortly. What we're going to be doing is Tim and I have been talking about, and at some point in the next year, we're going to be offering a very advanced 3-day hands-on build a website from scratch session that will be up to 10 developers in a one-on-one type session. What we're going to be doing at DevCon this year is doing a condensed version of that. We won't be able to do as much hands-on every line of code, but we are going to be reviewing the steps of creating a WebDev site from the point of I've got an idea to the point of clicking the publish button. So we're going to, and the example website that we're going to use for that is for a fictitious utility company called Next Stage Power, of course. And this is a online portal where customers of NextStage Power can log in and review their bill and print their bills and pay their bills. This is a simplified version of the online bill payment portal that I've created for Allen's water billing company that we're using as a model. So what we're going to be doing at DevCon is our first session, which is a 4-hour morning session. We're going to cover all of the foundational decisions that you make when you first start creating a website. You know, are we going to use hyperfile, standard data access commands? Are we going to use file manager classes? Are we, what do we want the look and feel to look like? Do we need SSL? A lot of those type of decisions, foundational things that we need to do. Are we going to use AWP or WebDev Dynamic? So we'll go through how we make those decisions, how we get that foundational stuff done. Then we will actually go through the bits and pieces of the website. User login, handling password hashes and password resets, printing a bill from the interface so that the user can view their past bills, all those types of things. We'll be dealing with loopers and pop-up screens and control templates. So we'll cover all those basic building blocks of creating a WebDev site. Then our last 2-hour session, which I think is Thursday morning.
It's on Friday morning.
Okay, Friday morning. We will then take that basic site that we created and we will extend it with some very advanced features to make it a little more not out of the box standard. So we're going to be doing some things that are simply for visual effect to make our website stand out from everyone else's website. We'll use some jQuery functions to turn the checkboxes into slider controls, and we have a really nice feature that you'll be seeing. We use a slider control instead of a combo box, which is a very nice advanced concept that really looks nice as we're selecting quarters of date quarters, you know, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter type thing. Combo boxes with multiple lines underneath the selection, so that we're as they drop down the combo box and they're selecting which account they want to review, they see the address for each of those accounts. So we'll be doing all of that stuff via JavaScript and jQuery. Then we will also be looking at the actual pay my bill function and interfacing with a third-party web service to handle that. So we'll be looking at those advanced concepts. And then at the end of DevCon, you will be leaving with the actual project file for this fictitious WebDev site so that you can actually see, take it home, play with it, and have all of that fully functional top to bottom WebDev site as kind of a building block to use for whatever you want to do with it.
Good deal. Yeah, NextStage Power Systems, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
NextStage Power, and use the Pay My Bill feature often. When I publish it, I'll make sure that it's using a live credit card account so that you can actually pay your bill if you want.
It'll link right to NextStage Consulting. Yeah. And guys, real quickly, I'm very excited about this year's DevCon. We are doing things a little bit differently than we have in the past. Previous years, we've had one tracked of courses where we have one stage, one room. This year we're going to have a couple different rooms, so you can have a couple different options on the courses that you would like to look at, and it doesn't increase the price of the admission at all. The price of the admissions will be the same as last year, and you just have more options now, more speakers, and we're really excited about it. Before we shut this off, Wolfgang or Jeff, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Great presentation, Pete. That's very helpful.
Thank you.
Well, nice. I've been watching the chats in different places, and it's basic questions which kind of pop up, and you've kind of covered it also, how to do it using hidden buttons and edit blocks and stuff like that.
Right,
So,
yeah, it's just a concept that keeps coming up, yeah.
Yeah, seems to come all the time up. So if you just hit it on again on the spot, there was that. So it's more than just a report example, it's also how to use the functionality of making it more user-friendly and more intuitively easy to use.
Yeah, good deal. And just a little bit of final house cleaning here. The sale on version 20 updates is still going on until the end of this month. See your local reseller in the U.S. It would be WINDEV US. In the UK, it would be Wolfgang's company. What's the name of your company, Wolfgang?
Track record.
Okay. And in South Africa, it would be Rebens with Ben Dell. And then, of course, there are other global resellers, but these are the ones that are active in this community here. So hearing nothing else, we'll go ahead and close out the webinar. Pete, any final words?
No, I think we got it covered.
Okay.
Thank
Well,
you.
everyone,
Enjoy the weekend.
Yeah, everyone have a great day and have a very productive day and a great weekend.
Cheers.
Val.